Hello guys, and welcome again to my channel. In this tutorial I will show you how you can make this bubblegum sweater. It's a knitting tutorial, so if you want to go into it, let's get started. So I'm using for this sweater some circular needles and some decay yarn. The recommended needle for this type of yarn are 4mm needles, but we will use a 4.5. I'm starting with the collar now, and I will use a 40 centimeter needles, but then I will change to longer one because we will increase on the yoke and we will need longer to have a longer cable. So I'm casting on with a long tail 60 stitches. This sweater that I'm doing is for size 4 years old, but you can make it, I think, for up to 6 years old because it's an oversized sweater. After finishing casting on, we will make sure that we have all the stitches oriented in the interior, and I will use here the loop method because even if I have a short cable, is too long for the number of stitches that I cast on. So you'll have to pull out the loop from the wire and make sure that you spread your stitches evenly, maybe in a half, to be easier to work with them, because we will join here and then start working in circular rounds. To be easier to do so, you have to cast on looser stitches, and now I will do the join. I hope you can see here. So I just grab with my right hand needle one loop from the left one, and then the second loop from my right needle. I'm taking over the needle and slip stitch. So this is basically how we make the join. Now we can use a stitch marker to put it here just to mark the end of the round. And now we will start to knit each stitches. The entire sweater is made only in knit stitches, so you don't have to know any other stitches except knitting, and also purl stitches because we will do an elastic band at the end. So now I'm knitting the entire stitches to the end of the row. The first round will be a bit difficult because of this loop and because the stitches are a bit tight, but you'll see that after working a few rounds it will work better. So it's better to have looser stitches in order to be easy to work with them. And we are working now basically the collar. We are not increasing yet because we will do a few rounds for the collar. I just made 15 rounds, but if you want your collar to be higher, you just can make more rounds, as many as you wish. I'm using almost the same pattern as I did for the leftover yarn sweater that I made for so in a size small, but for that one I used thicker yarn. Well, I work with 2 strands of yarn hauled at once, and I was working with 8mm needle, but basically you start with the same number of stitches, only that we are making less rounds here for this children's sweater for the stripes. You'll see later. So if you want to make the sweater in bigger sizes, you can find a written pattern on my blog. I will let the link into the description in the description box below. So now we are already to our round 2. you'll have to keep pulling a loop as you are working the stitches. Make sure that you have the same number of stitches on each side while you are working. So now I finished the collar. I made 15 rounds here, and now basically we will start to make our increases for our raglan lines. Remember that we cast on 60 stitches, so we will have 2 stitches for each of the raglan line, and we will have 18 and 18 stitches for back and front, and 8 stitches for sleeves. So now I'm knitting the first 9 stitches, because after the 9 stitches we will start making the increase. So here I'm just yarn over my finger to be easy, and then put a loop on the right needle. I'm putting a stitch marker here. Now we will work 2 stitches on each 2. This will be the raglan line, and then put a stitch marker and make another increase. And now we are going further, knitting 8 stitches for the sleeve. This yarn that I'm using is Baby Soft from Hobby, but unfortunately this yarn is no longer available, but you can use any other DK yarn or a yarn that is suitable for 4.5 millimeters needle. Now I made the second increase, and I'm doing the stitches for the second raglan line, putting a stitch marker, then increase again. And I'm going with the front panel stitches, which, as I said, there are 18 stitches. So I'm knitting the next 18 stitches. I still have to pull out the loop on my needle cable. Okay, I finished stitches for the front, increase, knit 2 for raglan line, another stitch marker, and increase again. And we are getting now to the second sleeve. Again, we will need 8 stitches. And now increase again, put a stitch marker, knit 2, put a stitch marker, again 1 increase, and continue and knit the other stitches to the end of the row. And with this round we will increase 1 round, we will do the increases, and the next round we will only knit the all stitches around. So only when we increased on this row, and then we will do 1 row just knit, then increase again, without increasing, with increases, without increases. So this is how we will work the yoke. Now I'm knitting all stitches, and on the next round where you'll have to do the increases again, remember that you'll have to do it on the right. You have to do the increase before the stitch marker, then moving the stitch marker to the right-handed needle, then making the raglan line, the 2 knit stitches, putting the stitch marker again on the right needle, and then make another increase. So on the right we are doing the increase before the stitch marker, on left we are doing the increase after the stitch marker. This is what you'll have to know. Now I finished this row without increasing, and now I'm starting the next row. Where I will increase again. Let's see, I'm getting to the stitch marker, so now I'm doing the increase before the stitch marker, taking the stitch marker on the right needle, then knit 2, taking the second stitch marker to the right needle and make an increase. And you'll have to repeat these 2 rows until you'll have in total 30 rows. After 30 rows, we're not done with the yoke yet for this size, but we will change the color. So just continue like this until you'll have, and repeat these 2 rows until you'll have 30 rows in total. If your needles are becoming too short, the cable of your needles is too short because we keep adding stitches, then you can change the needles. How you change the needles? Just start hand knitting, having in your right hand the new point needle that you want to change, and basically by knitting all the stitches you are transferring the stitches to the other knitting needles with a longer cable. So next, continue and repeat these two rows, one with increases, one without, until you have in total 30 rows. Okay, so I have 30 rows in total, and now I will change with this my second color that I'm using for this sweater, which is this light pink. And let's see how we will change it. So I will change the color before. Yes, you can mark the end of the row somewhere on a side or even in a raglan line, not to be so visible where you are changing the yarn, the color, but it's not that visible that it will bother me, so that's why I'm keeping in the back, because it's more easier for me, and I'm used to this kind of working the rounds from crochet. So when you are changing the color, I'm just changing it with a few stitches before the end of the row, and just by knitting, and we're knitting yarn over the second color. And then you can make a knot with the ends of the yarn on the back, just to be sure that you won't lose any stitches. And now we will continue in this color 10 more rounds. So the yoke will have 40 rounds in total. After 10 rounds we won't change the color, because we are continuing with this color for 20 rounds, sorry, but we will split the sleeves, so we will meet you there just to show you how you can do this. Okay, so I made 10 more rounds using this pink color, and now it's time to split the ends, and I will use the easier method because not every one of you have more pairs of needles or cables or so on. So I'm using one needle with yarn in it, and we will transfer the stitches for the sleeve when we will get there on this piece of yarn. So now we are starting the round as usual, knitting all the stitches until the first raglan line. Remember that we have 2 stitches on our raglan line, so we will knit inclusive the first stitch of this line. So let's see, I will remove the stitch marker, we won't need it anymore. So now I'm knitting one more stitch from the raglan line, and now I'm taking my needle with the yarn, and I will transfer all the stitches for the sleeves on this yarn helped by the needle. I'll transfer all the stitches including the first stitch of the next raglan line. If you are working with some detachable wire needles, you can just I don't know how to say it, unscrew the needle point and then just put the stoppers at the end and let the sleeve like this. Okay, now the first stitch from the next raglan line is transferred on my piece of yarn here. Now I just take off the needle and tie the ends just to make sure that your stitches will stay in place. Okay, I forgot to remove the needle, but don't worry, I will just cut it like this. Okay, so now that we have the first sleeve separated, it's time to continue with our front side stitches. I will go directly in the next stitch here, skipping the stitches for the sleeve. I'm doing the second stitch of the raglan, then I will remove the stitch marker, we don't need it anymore, and we will knit the next stitches until the next raglan line and the next sleeve, where we will proceed the same as we did with this one. Okay, so we will go up to here and then split the sleeves again. Okay, so I finished splitting the sleeves. The stitches for my sleeves are on the yarn now, so I'm not working with them anymore. And I just continue with 10 more rows in this lighter pink, then changing the color at every 20 rows. So then changing to the darker pink, working 20 rows, and then with this purple, and with the purple I just work 12 rows in knitting and then adding this elastic. I will show you on the sleeve how to work the elastic, because it's the same. We're just knitting one and purl one, I'm here on the one on my first sleeve. Don't worry, I will show you on the second one how you will start and how we are working the sleeve. Now I just want to show you the elastic. It's basically just knit one, purl one for the entire stitches. If you have an uneven number of stitches, the last stitches that you have, you can knit or purl two, just to make sure that you have an even number of stitches. Even if you started with an even number of stitches, in the end we should have also an even number of stitches, but in any cases, if you don't have, you can just knit or purl two stitches together just to have an even number of stitches. And now to show you how to cast off, also for the body, I'm working on the end of the sleeve of my first sleeve, but because I didn't have time to make the tutorial for the body hem, I just said to show you on the sleeve just to be able to end with the body of the sweater. So using a crochet hook, I'm doing with a crochet hook this, and I'm using it like a right needle, and just purl the stitch or knit it if it's a knit stitch, pull out the loop, and then the loop, pull it through the loop on your hook, and do it like so until you have no stitches left onto the stitch that is on your crochet hook. And in the end you will just have to make a slip stitch with the first stitch just to end up the sleeve or the hem nicely. This is how you will proceed on the hem also. I just like I said, I was showing you on the sleeve just because I didn't have time to make a video with the hem basically, but it's the same. So you just every stripe of color has 20 rows. This is what you have to know. And with the purple we did only 12 rows in knitting stitches, and then added 8 more rows in this elastic stitch, alternating knit one, purl one for the entire number of stitches. And now let's go to the second sleeve, because I will show you how to work the second sleeve. I'm using some socks needles because I don't have such a short cable needles, but you can use a longer cable needles, only that you will have to use the loop method here again. You can watch some YouTube tutorials about this, but I will just use my sock needle for this, because we will work circular and we have a small amount of stitches, so it's basically impossible to work with normal needles, cable needles, unless we are using the loop method. So I'm just transferring on the needles the stitches that I have here. I will use only 3 because I don't have too many stitches. So I'm just transferring the stitches. You can count the stitches, and then you don't have to have on each needle the same numbers of stitches, not at all. So just transfer a few stitches, make sure that you don't have too many, because if you have too many it will be difficult to work with them. The ideal amount of stitches is to just divide the total number of stitches by 3, and then the result of stitches you are putting on each needle. So now I will continue and transferring the stitches on the needles. So I have 3 needles, all my stitches are on my needles now, and we will do the join here, the same join as we did it on the collar. We will use a 4th needle for this because you have to have always one needle that is empty. But first let's just make the join. So with my right needle I will just take one stitch from the left needle, and then the second stitch that I have it on my right needle, I will pull it out over the first stitch and let it like this. So I just made a join here, and now I'm putting a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the round and taking my 4th needle. Otherwise, if you can work the sleeves without making the join, just start knitting, but you'll have a small hole at the armpit in this way. So I'm grabbing the same lighter pink that I worked on the raglan because we will have 10 more rows to do in this color. By the way, on the sleeves I kept the same number of rows with each color as for the body, so 20 rows in each color. The sleeves were a bit too long, it's true, but I don't mind when I'm working something for my daughter because they are growing pretty fast, so it's not a problem for me. But if you want smaller sleeves, not that long, you can just work less rounds with each color. And now we are working all stitches. So basically you are working the stitches on the first needle, then basically your left needle will be empty and you'll use it to knit as a right needle to knit the next stitches from the second needle. If you are not used to work with these socks needles, it's not that difficult. You can look on the loop method and maybe it will be easier for you. I will let you in the written pattern and even in the description below I will let a link to a tutorial that I found it really useful. So basically we are continuing with the sleeve, working 10 more rounds in this lighter pink, then 20 rows with the darker pink. Okay, and then we will work with the purple only 8 rows because after row 8 we will start to do some decreasing for the cuff. So basically we are working 8 rows, then we will decrease. So I'm on round 8 in the purple color. And now I will do 1 row decreasing to make a smaller cuff, and we will decrease, we will knit 3, then make 1 decrease, basically knitting 2 stitches together. Okay, and we will repeat this to the end of the row. So I'm knitting 2 together like this, and now knitting 3 more stitches. Then again knit 2 together, 3 more stitches, 2 together, 3 more stitches, knit stitches, 3 together, 2 together, sorry. And we'll continue like this for the entire row. This is row 8 in the purple color. Then we will continue with 3 more rows up to row 12, and at row 12 we will decrease again. The second decrease is not mandatory if you feel like the cuff is smaller enough, is narrower enough. I just felt that I need a few more stitches off, and I decreased again at row 12 in the same way. Knit 2 together, but then knit 2 stitches, the next 2 stitches. So the decrease pattern were 2 plus 1 decrease, not 3 plus 1 as we did on this row. And then after row 12 we will start to do the elastic, as I was showing you on the first sleeve, for 8 more rows. Okay, I'm continuing to work to the sleeves. Now I will start the round 12, knitting 2 together, and then knitting to the next 2 stitches. Now I let the stitches only on 2 needles because I have less stitches now. So now I knit 2 and then again knit 2 together. Then again knit 2 and knit 2 together. And after finishing this row, repeating knit 2, 2 together, knit 2, 2 together, we will start to do the elastic. So I have 2, now I'm knitting 2 together again to the end of the row. After finishing the row, we will start now to work the elastic. So we will knit 1 and then purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, until we will get to the end of the row. And the same as I said for the hem, if you don't have an even number of stitches, the last stitches you can knit them together or purl them together. If it's not, because we started with a knit stitch, then last stitch has to be a purl stitch. So if you are at a purl stitch but you have 2 stitches left, then purl them together just to have even number of stitches. And we will continue to repeat this row with knit 1, purl 1 for 8 more rows. And then we will finish and fasten off, and look like this. I had 2 stitches and I just purled them both together just to start my next row to have last stitch a purl and next knit stitch. So to have the elastic to be correct with 1 purl, 1 knit. And we will continue for 8 rows as I said. And then I will show you again how to use the crochet hook and fasten off. Okay, knit 1, purl 1. Okay, I just finished to work the stitches here, to work the rows for the elastic. And now I will use a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook, or you can use a 4 millimeter crochet hook as well. And I will use it as my right needle. Knitting first stitch, keeping the loop on your hook, then purl the next one and the loop, pull it through the loop on your hook. So always keep only one loop on your right crochet hook, or on your crochet hook, because it's the only one. And work the stitches like they are, so purl or knit, purl or knit. And we will do like so until we won't have any stitches left on our knitting needles. And at the end we will just do a slip stitch with the first stitch and wave in all the ends, and basically the sweater is done. As I said somewhere at the beginning, if you this sweater, this tutorial is for 4 years old. My daughter has almost 4 years and approximate 1 meter, so it's not that tall, just to give you an idea about the size of the sweater. Now we will wave in all ends, and this is it. You can find the pattern, written pattern, in multiple other sizes up to 10 years old on my blog. And thanks for watching. I'm really happy that I did this tutorial with a knitted sweater, and I hope you like it and you will try it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.